Hey, good morning, everybody. We're here again, Lance Jacobs with Justice Collective. And yeah, Thursday Instagram Lives. We are going live as we speak. Had a really great conversation last week with Danny Silk from Living on Purpose. Really good moments with him. And again, our hope here is to take time with leaders that are based in our community doing social change. And so excited this morning. We're going to have Victoria Robinson join us, and looks like she's just made it in. Victoria, good to see you.
Hi, how are you? I don't think I've ever done a live. I was going to I'm going to be honest with you, Lance. I am so technologically challenged. I didn't know that I'd be able to do this.
I
So,
know.
woo!
Congratulations, you made it in. It's not as challenging as it all sounds. The reality is we may have a bunch of people join us live right now, but it'll all get posted, and so quite a few people are going to be viewing it even after we're done talking. So, really, really excited that you're joining us, Victoria. Thanks for making it happen, and thanks for doing something that felt maybe kind of new and challenging. And here you go. Now we're both doing the Instagram live thing. I don't know when my first was. It wasn't more than a few months ago. Was my first time, and we made it in together.
Technology, I have a love-hate relationship with it. And it's just it has its positives, its negatives, but this is one of the positives, getting to share and talk. Hi,
Yeah,
Rock.
I know it works. And thanks so much for being generous with us and joining us today. I think you're back in Central Time Zone, so it's probably around lunchtime for you. So hopefully we're not disrupting lunch or whatever.
Nah, girl's got to eat, but she can eat later.
But yeah, we do these interviews quite often, and really the drive behind what we're doing with Justice Collective is just getting time with leaders that are active in some space of social change. So their connection to Jesus has led them into some space of transformation. They're addressing some element of an issue in our generation, and you have some authority in a very big issue in our generation. That is the large topic of pro-life, abortion, choice, all this. Like, it's a wow. There's so much to talk about.
Yeah.
Uh, Very, very honored that you're joining us. Thank you so much for bringing your story, your life. Why don't you just quickly tell us what you're doing, a bit of your background, and we'll jump in there. And the focus of your life mission right now, your leadership in the world.
Okay. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. It is always an honor to be asked to speak. I was just on an interview before I came here, and the gentleman was asking me about doing another podcast, and I said, sure, if you think people want to hear what I have to say, I can talk, especially about this issue. But I have been involved in the pro-life cause now for 24 years. And I came about it, unfortunately, honestly, because over 30 years ago, over 3 decades ago, I was a single mother with two little girls who were 9 months old and 3 years old at the time. And their father decided, I don't want to be married anymore. I don't want to have kids. I don't want a wife. And he went from North Carolina, where we lived, to your neck of the woods, California. And he went as far away from me as he could. But unfortunately, it wasn't just me, it was my children. And were devastated by this because up to this point they knew their dad, and then all of a sudden he's gone. He's not visiting. He wasn't financially supporting us at all. And so I had to start working two jobs. And I want to say those things, Lance, first of all, because women that find themselves in crisis pregnancies are very vulnerable, and the abortion industry knows this. And about 9 months after my husband left us, I found myself falling madly in love with a man I met at one of my jobs. I was managing a health club in Charlotte, North Carolina. And 9 months into our relationship, I was pregnant. Now, when I talk about abortion up to that point, I was always would say I was pro-life. I even would have arguments with people who used abortion as birth control. I had one friend who'd had 7 abortions, and
Mhm.
our friendship ended because she was so flippant. Well, if I get pregnant, I'll have an abortion. If I get pregnant, I'll have an abortion. And I just couldn't understand that mentality. So here I was now, a single mom with two little girls, wondering how am I going to continue to put food on the table? And now I'm pregnant. How stupid can I be? But abortion didn't enter my mind until I told my boyfriend, and he started talking about, we're going to get married one day in the future. We'll have our own children later. But for now, I think you know what we need to do. You can barely take care of the two kids you have. So when I called the abortion clinic in Charlotte, North Carolina, and told her my whole story, from my husband leaving to now being a single mom with a pregnancy, she said, "You'd be really selfish, don't you think, to go through with a pregnancy when you can barely take care of these beautiful little girls you have? You'd be a selfish mom to do that to them." And it was easy to manipulate me at a time when I was so vulnerable and so terrified that everything that I needed to hear they were saying between her and my boyfriend. So I did choose abortion. On a Saturday morning, I drove myself to the abortion clinic. My boyfriend was out of town, couldn't even take me. Lied to my babysitter, and I was never the same. The woman who walks in, Lance, into an abortion clinic is not the same woman who walks out. I knew immediately afterwards that I was different. I knew I just made a huge mistake. And I knew I needed to bury it or it would eat me alive. And even lying on the table while they were performing the procedure, as they call it, I was looking at the ceiling, wanting to say, I changed my mind. I want to get out of here. What am I going to do that? That they would be angry at me, that everyone would be mad at me, that I would be making the wrong choice. And I let them into my child's life because I wasn't courageous enough to speak up. And I paid a high price for that. So it set me on the course that I've been involved in for 24 years. After 10 years, I finally went to a pregnancy resource center in my town and said to the director, "Help me. I can't live with this guilt and shame and regret anymore. Is there any hope for someone like me?" And she got me in after abortion recovery. It changed my life.
Talk about that. So the after abortion recovery, that sounds like a big passion of yours, something that's a real focus. What happens there? What's that process look like? What have you experienced? Because it's something you've been engaged in for quite a while.
Yeah, well, I can tell you that when I started my first night of this abortion recovery, it's a Thursday through Sunday model. And we've taken a 12-week Bible study that's just focused on having abortion, even miscarriage. There's a lot of healing that comes from these retreats, and put it into a 4-day weekend. So when I showed up on that Thursday, I can remember vividly, Lance, looking at the facilitators and saying to them, "Look, I've been a Christian now for years. I have begged God to forgive me for having an abortion. I have asked him to take this from me, and I'm still carrying it. I'm here because Mary, the director, told me I needed to come here, that you could help me." And I was sitting there going, "I'm just here because I don't know what you're going to be able to do to help me." And these precious women looked at me and said, "We're just glad you're here, Victoria." And I wanted to hit them. If I'm being honest, I wanted to hit them. I was like, "What?" And so I was so angry, but I made a commitment to Mary, the director, that I would go through it. So long story short, by Sunday, after over a decade of walking around with guilt, shame, condemning myself, involved in church, Lance, I was on the worship team singing worship for a church of 7,000 people. I was very involved in youth group, and I kept thinking, if they knew, they'd kick me out of church. If they knew, they wouldn't let me sing anymore. I kept my secret. All these times when women would come to me at church events and want me to pray for them because they'd had abortions, and I'd watch God completely heal them. And then I'd go back to my house and say, "What about me? What about me? Why do you keep bringing these women to me?" I mean, it was a whole long story of what I went through for those years and years and years. And by Sunday, after a 4-day recovery, which I saw someone write, is the Bible study I went through, and it's the one that I now facilitate and as I facilitate these same weekends. But on that Sunday, those same women, when I went to them and said, "Hey, I just want you to know," I've always been a very passionate person, as you maybe have noticed, and I said, I am going to be teaching these. I'm going to facilitate these. Every woman who's had an abortion needs to know that there's help for them. And I'm going to do these retreats. Train me, teach me. And they looked at me and said, yeah, we know. We knew that God was going to use you to do this. And I knew then God was going to take what the enemy meant to destroy me and turn it into good. And now here it is, all these over 2 decades later, that I have been doing these retreats for women, and I have men who counsel men. And it has transformed others' lives like it transformed mine.
Talk about, I mean, going back a few steps, talk about some of that reality. So the shame that you're carrying, you know, the impact of having an abortion. I'm just, I don't know. And so you even just mentioned there, like men are being involved in this process of restoration. What is it that a woman has to carry and has to endure after making that decision?
Well, it's so many things, Lance. For me and for many women like me, I got involved in abusive relationships. I thought I deserved it. I thought I deserved to be cheated on, to be talked down to. I deserved to not be happy, because who was I to expect God to bless my life when I'd taken the life of my own child? So the things that go through your mind are your self-esteem is shot to pieces. You feel you have no self-worth. You feel that God could never use you. God could never forgive you or love. God can forgive me for every sin, but not abortion, which is insane. But that is what happens with the post-abortive man or woman. I just did a retreat a few weeks ago in Texas, and the woman that was there, part of it, she looked at all the women in the room who all but one had had an abortion. And she said, in 19 years, I've never met someone who's had an abortion. In 19 years, I haven't had a friend, because I felt like if I keep you at a distance, you won't know my secret. So I've kept friendships away. And I looked at her and I said, you have met women who've had abortions. They're just not telling you. You're not telling them. Nobody talks about it. And I told her, I said, you've robbed so many people of being your friend. But that's what the enemy does. He keeps women and men in these isolations of, you're the only one who feels this way. And one of the things I found interesting, Lance, that she told me was that she would start having these feelings of smothering her children, feeling it, all the other things I've already mentioned, getting involved in bad relationships. There's a whole litany of different things that happen after an abortion. And she would go and Google, could this be from my abortion? And everything that came up were articles about abortion doesn't affect women. Women have said they'd do it again, because the abortion industry makes sure those are the things on these. I'm not I told you I'm very technologically challenged, but those SEOs, and they make sure those are the things you're reading. So you feel like I'm crazy. It's just me that feels this way, when it isn't. 64 million abortions that we know of since Roe v. Wade, 128 million people sitting in churches all across this country who think they're the only one feeling this way, and they're not.
So even I want to go deeper there. Like you mentioned, even in your process, that there was an influence. So you made a choice, but there was definitely cultural pressures and, you know, individual relationships that kind of led you into that space. Talk about, because it's still something. Yeah, I mean, I get it, but I don't get it. The real conviction that people carry that no, an abortion is okay. Like, talk about what you've discovered is out there, both in culture, some of the rhetoric, and I don't want to bring this up as like we're judging anybody. I want to bring it up to understand, like, oh wow, this is what people actually deal with that are in that moment of, do I have an abortion or not?
Well, there's so many different factors that go into, Lance, into that decision. And you're right. Culture tells you, you don't need to have a baby. You'd be a selfish mother. Think about your children. When I was driving to that abortion clinic, taking myself, I had my hand on my stomach, begging to forgive me. This blob of tissue, as I was told, that's all it was.
Yeah.
And talking to this child saying, you don't want to be brought into this mess of my life. I'm divorced. My husband has left us. I can barely take care of your sisters. I'm in daycare for 12 hours a day. All of these things going through my mind, telling this unborn blob of tissue, And so that's the narrative that's been created out there. It's not really anything. It can't live outside the mother's womb. Well, guess what? When a baby's born, they can't either without their mother's help. And the only difference between that child at conception, the only difference, Lance, is the fact of growth. You're a zygote, something just fell, a fertilized, and nobody's here, so that's kind of scary. Not really. A fertilized egg becomes a zygote. It becomes an embryo. It becomes a fetus. It becomes then an infant, then a toddler, then a preteen, then an adolescent, then an adult, then a senior citizen. The only difference, Lance, between you, me, and that unborn child is growth. It's time. Science has proven that life begins at conception. The ultrasound has proven that what happens in the womb is life. Life is taking place. That's why they're very careful at abortion clinics to not let a woman see the ultrasound. Because if you see your baby, if you hear your baby's heartbeat, if you're looking at an ultrasound seeing arms and legs, then you might tend to ask, hey, that doesn't look like a blob of tissue to me. That looks like a baby. So they're very careful because the abortion industry is a multi-billion-dollar industry. This is not some political statement. It's the facts. So when they've created a narrative, there's no life in the womb. When we have created a narrative in this country that life is not valuable, which we've done, it's a lot easier for women to think, it's no big deal. It's like getting a tooth pulled. That woman told me at the abortion clinic, oh, honey, it's going to be nothing. Well, it's like removing a tumor. And when you leave here, never think of it again. What a lie. I thought of nothing else for over a decade every single day. So they create this narrative because think about it, Lance, when you're the most vulnerable time of your life is in a pregnancy when you don't know what to do. You're unmarried. You don't know how you're going to afford it. Maybe you've had an affair. You're terrified to tell your families. It's easy to go, oh, honey, you're going to be okay. There's nothing there anyway. Women do this every day. It hasn't affected. Go look it up. It doesn't affect people at all. Lies, lies, lies. Have I met women in my 24-year career that have said to me it didn't affect me at all? 2. And they were 2 of the most angry women I've ever met. Now, have I met women who've said, I would probably do it again? Well, you probably would because of where you were at the time. But if you'd known the truth, maybe you wouldn't have. Had I seen an ultrasound of my child, had I had one person say, are you sure you want to do this? You've got to. I had 2 children, Lance, I knew. So culture has created this narrative again of, feels good, do it. Fast food mentality. I want it now, I want it. You can't have a baby and have a successful life. What a crock. I mean, what a crock of crap. Sorry, I know it's church, but at least I didn't say the other word. But it's a crock. It's a narrative to support their multi-billion-dollar industry. And they are buying yachts and mansions off the blood of these children and off of the chaos and disaster that comes from these mothers and fathers who have to deal with the ramifications after they choose. They're not right there knocking on the door saying, how are you doing since your abortion? They could care less. And then when they call them and say, I'm dealing with this, go see a therapist, they'll put you on medication. But no medication can fit, and I'm not against medications, but it's a spirit God that can only fill that hole in the post-abortive man or woman, because it was a spirit child. It was we're all spirits, and that child was taken. There's no pill, there's no amount of alcohol or drugs, which many women and men end up doing after an abortion. They want to numb the pain, to take away, except a God who can heal and forgive and grant you that redemption and life and reconciliation after an abortion. That's why the after abortion recoveries are so important to me. That's why I'm passionate about them. They saved my life.
That's an amazing thought that you shared earlier, like thousands of women that have been through what you're talking about and not having the ability to talk about it and to be vulnerable. And like, yeah, that's a choice I made, because in vulnerability, there's healing. And so if you're holding it in, even those 2 women you just referred to that said, no, I don't really regret it, and you say they're full of anger, it's like, it sounds like unresolved trauma, right?
Exactly. And I wasn't going to say that to them because they'll just get more angry.
Yeah.
But I can recognize when you genuinely look at me, if you're going to say, yeah, I am over that trauma or whatever the trauma is.
Sure.
And say that when I've spoken at events, at church events or banquets or fundraising events, I had a woman once come up to me and she said, you got so emotional sharing your abortion story. And I'm just worried about you. Are you sure you've accepted God's forgiveness and your healing? And I looked at her and I said, do you have children? She said, I have 3. Well, if one of them passed, would you grieve that child the rest of your life? And she was devastated. I said, well, the post-abortive man or woman feels the same grief when they've realized what happened to their unborn child. It's very difficult. So they bury it even more and they don't tell anyone for fear of rejection, Lance, for fear. I had singing. I'm not joking. I'd be up there singing, this is the air I breathe, while I'm thinking, I wonder if anyone can know that I had an abortion and would they even want me to sing in their church? Those are the things that the enemy does to us. He convinces us they would hate you. They'd reject you. Nobody would want anything to do with you. Lies, lies, lies. Now, there are people that I was just called a murderer at an event I spoke at here in Nashville a year ago, right before COVID. And he just kept yelling from the crowd. And I had 2 options, Lance. I could either ignore him, but I knew as I was looking at the crowd of hundreds of people that there were people sitting there who'd had abortions. And if I didn't address him, they would think, see, she can't even say anything because she knows he's right, because that's us. That's us. So I had to address him, and I did in love. But I'm not afraid to address someone who wants to say something so vile, because it's about them. It's not about me. And yeah.
So there's some questions coming in. I'd love to also hear. So again, stepping back, if a woman is in a situation where they're considering an abortion, like what kind of input can you give them about alternatives? What would you say to that individual that would encourage them to not take their baby? And again, it's a unique, vulnerable place. I mean, I think that's where a lot of problems happen, is when we're in really vulnerable places. And then, as you said earlier, if there are people preying on our vulnerabilities, so culture is preying on a woman's vulnerability. Yeah, speak to that individual can choose life and not make a choice to take the baby's life.
Yeah. I would say, first of all, don't panic. I would say, take a deep breath. It is not the end of the world because you find yourself pregnant. There are local pregnancy resource centers that are there to help you. I love the argument, and I hate the argument, oh, you pro-life people, you just want them to have these babies, then you do nothing for them. That's a lie, a flat out lie. There are many organizations that are there right to help you. That's why when you call your local pregnancy center, your pregnancy resource center, and they're all throughout the country, they will help you with a plan. They will walk through that plan with you. They're not just going to be like, yeah, there's another one we saved. We can put that on, this notch on our belt. That is not why they're there. They love the woman, because that woman and you matter just as much. As a Christian, Lance, I matter just as much to Christ, and he died on the cross just as much for me as he did my unborn child that I aborted. And that's what we need to understand as well, is that these women, these moms and these dads, they matter. So let's meet their needs first. Let's let them know how we can help them. And do not believe the lie that nobody's going to help you, because it's not true. Get in touch with me. I give you my word. I will find the resources for you to help you if you're in a crisis pregnancy. Abortion is a permanent solution to a temporary problem. I can tell you that I have met thousands of women throughout my career. I have counseled thousands of women. I have met them everywhere. And I'm telling you right now, there are more people that want to help with you than you realize. So when you're in that mindset, though, and then you have other people saying, the boyfriend, the husband, the parents, no, you need to do this. You need to do this. It doesn't help. So you've got to find somebody who can be neutral. I'm neutral. I'm not going to force anybody, Lance, to do something. It's not, we all have God-given free will. But I'm darned if I'm not going to tell you the facts. And because you deserve it. Women deserve the truth. about abortion. It's their choice what they choose. And I'll be there for them if they tell me. And I've had those cases where I've worked with women who are on the fence and they choose abortion. And I let them know, hey, you've got my number. When you're ready for counseling, you call me. And they're like, but are you mad at me? Of course I'm not mad at you. I'm grieved with you that you felt that was your only option. I'm grieved knowing what's coming for you, but I'm not mad at you. I want to help you. I don't want you walking around for over 10 years like I did without getting the help that you need and deserve. So I am not one that forces anything. So I would just say, find a pregnancy center in your area. Please let them help you. That is absolutely why they exist. And don't believe the lies that no one can help, because it's not true, or that they don't want to help. They do want to help. Pro-life doesn't mean let's save all the babies from abortion. It's about people. I'm not just pro-life. I am pro-man. I am pro-woman. I am pro-people. So these, like I said, these parents matter to me as much as the unborn children do.
Good. And so I know in my community, there is a place, it's called CareNet Pregnancy Center.
Yep.
Not pretty common in most communities throughout the United States that there would be a place like a crisis pregnancy center or something to that degree.
Yes.
That's going to give you a different set of ideas and let you know, yeah, you do have a choice, and keeping your baby is one of them. And as you said, they're not there to force somebody. They're really there to stand with that individual and help. Are those pretty,
that's why they exist. But Lance only help the woman at that point of decision. They're also helping women that need not all of their clients are abortion minded. They're coming to them because, hey, my husband lost his job and I need some diapers. They give them to them free. Hey, I'm pregnant. I don't have any maternity clothes. I can't really afford to buy any. Here you go. Here's a box fill. They're not just there saying all the women thinking of having an abortion, but that's the narrative again that the abortion side has painted of these pregnancy centers. Or if you're pro-life, all they care about is what about after? What about after the baby's born? Well, I'm glad you asked. And I'll be happy to tell you what we do after the babies are born, what organizations throughout the country are helping after the baby's born. But if they can convince these young, vulnerable women, nobody's going to help you. Get rid of it. They know how to prey on these women in their most vulnerable times. And that is the part that gets me fired up and angry. We put more warnings, Lance, on cigarette cartons than we give women who are walking in abortion clinics. It's pure insanity. It gets me really angry.
So I saw a question that came up. I would love to ask this for that individual. They just asked, what do you think the church can do to put the spotlight on this issue more, to be more effective and help in this space? So you're obviously a kind of tip of the spear person in this issue, and you're raising the issue. But what can the church do to be educated, to engage, to make a difference? Yeah.
Gosh, so many things. The first thing they should be doing is supporting their local pregnancy center. Okay. If it's in their budgets, they should add it to their budgets. Right. I was CEO of a pregnancy centers, 3 different ones for over a 21-year career. And I can tell you, Lance, I hate to say it, but it was the churches that I had to beg for support more than anyone. Yeah. And I would go to pastors and say, I'd hold pastors' luncheons, 2 would show up. And I would ask these pastors, hey, put us in your budget. As many churches that are in my community, I shouldn't have to be begging for money to keep paying my staff or keep the lights on or buy cribs for these moms. So help us. So that's the number one thing. Get involved with your local pregnancy resource center. They are on the front lines. They are boots on the ground. So that is the first thing they should be doing. The second thing is bring someone in like me. Bring someone into me to your church. Give me your pulpits. I'll take 5 minutes. I'll take the whole thing. I'll preach a message. Bring people like me. Don't be afraid to talk about the issue. If you don't feel comfortable about it, because many pastors tell me, I think I could do more damage than good, because what if I have all these women that I've opened their wounds? And I'm like, then bring someone like me in who can tell them resources to go to if they are the ones sitting there hearing an abortion message thinking, all right, now what? Now what? So bring a person. It doesn't have to be me, but I would love to come. and talk about the issue. If we would just talk about it. I mean, let's communicate about it. When you don't talk about it, pastor, when you don't bring this subject into your church, then your congregants who are sitting there, and if you think that you don't have people in your churches who've had abortion, you need to get your head out of the sand, because 1 out of 4 women's had an abortion, which means 1 out of 4 men sitting in a church has been involved in an abortion. So you need to wake up. They are in your churches. And if they're not hearing their pastors talk about it, what do you think that's going to do? More levels of shame, more levels of guilt, more levels of rejection everywhere I look. Because they're not telling you because they don't feel safe. Some pastors preach these hell and damnation messages, and I've looked at many of them and said, oh, so you think after you tell women that have had abortions, they're murderers, how could they kill their children? They're running to your altars. I mean, what are you? You're an idiot. I mean, that's not how we bring people to the cross or bring them to the altar. Yes, we need to tell them truth and love, but my gosh, let's not forget our audience. 1 in 4 people has had an abortion or been involved in abortion. They are sitting with you at work. They're your next door neighbors. They're sitting with you next to you at church. So let's talk about it. So churches, get involved in your PRCs. Don't be afraid to talk about the abortion issue in love, and bring people like me to speak, to share my whole testimony, to talk to these men and women about where they go to get help, and to empower your church to say, I want to get involved. Well, great, go volunteer at your pregnancy center. There's so many things we can do, but it starts with conversation.
Yeah, I love that. Talking about something, right? And if we keep it, if it's all silent.
What a concept, Lance. What a concept.
Yeah. Good. Well, how do people follow you? We're going to start wrapping up here. How do people follow you or find you? You're on Instagram as R. Victoria Robinson. Is that correct?
Yeah, and I just went private on my Instagram, but if you send me a request, I will accept it. I just, honestly, I'm so tired of all the junk that goes on social media, so I won't get social media, even though I'd love to. I will stay on because adoptions have happened through social media. A girl wrote me on Facebook who had been raped and was pregnant, was 5 months getting ready to have an abortion, said, can you help me? Tell me where to go. We ended up talking, and I ended up finding the parents to adopt her son. And she's never regretted it once. So I have this love-hate relationship with social media, and it does do good. So you can find me on Instagram. You can find me on Facebook. You can email me, rvictoriarobinson@gmail.com. That's an email that I keep for anyone that wants to write me about, if you want to know about these retreats, if you want to know how to host one in your city, if you want to know how to get involved in this issue, if you just don't even know where to start, if you're pregnant right now and you don't know what to do, all I'm asking you to do is have a conversation. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm not going to judge you for what you choose. Just have a conversation. You deserve to have a conversation, and your baby does too.
That's good. And then your book. How would people find your book?
They Lied to Us is on Amazon. My second book, and I don't want to leave without talking about my second book. My first book, called They Lied to Us, I interviewed women who'd had abortions. It's in its 4th print now. My second book is They Lied to Us Too, TOO, and I'm interviewing men now. Sorry, I lost you there. I'm trying to get this thing. It'll be out towards the end of about August. And in that book, I've interviewed men who are telling me their stories. Do you see that thing, or can you see me, Lance?
Yeah, I can see you. You're great. You're great.
There's something on my screen. I don't know how to get it off. But They Lied to Us Too is going to be coming out, and I've been interviewing men. And I want to tell this last thing, Lance, because men aren't talked about enough. And after I went through healing, the after abortion recovery, and I felt Holy Spirit telling me to write this book, They Lied to Us, once it was being published, I felt very strongly that I should call him and tell him about the book. Even though there's nothing in there that identifies him, I just felt that I should call him. We hadn't talked in over 10 years Because after a couple has an abortion, Lance, statistics prove 9 out of 10 times they don't make it. It's too traumatic of an experience staying together. It's a constant reminder of what you've done. Looking at him, I thought, you should have protected me and our child. He looked at me, I believe, and thought, I can't believe she actually did it. And we never looked at each other as the same. So we broke up. We were going to have kids later and get married, right? No, we broke up. So after 10 years, when I wrote my book and it was being published and coming out, I called him. He knew my voice immediately. And he said, I've been waiting for this call over 10 years to beg you for forgiveness for what I made you do. He was crying so hard, Lance, I could barely understand him. So he said, it's haunted me all these years, and I've been in therapy 8 years dealing with it. Can you ever forgive me? I should have protected you. I should have protected our unborn child, and I failed you both. In that moment, I realized, oh, I haven't let go of all my unforgiveness towards him. And I did, right in that moment. And it was like freedom for me, complete freedom. Because we think when we don't forgive someone, we're hurting them. But we're not. We're hurting ourselves. And I always say it's like taking poison, expecting them to die. Well, the second thing I realized was I felt Holy Spirit speak to my heart and say, do not forget these fathers. Do not forget these men. They're hurting. So from that moment on, anytime I ever speak, I talk about the men. So these men that are sharing their stories with me are saying to me, thank you. Finally, somebody's listening to us, because it's all about the women. It's always about their issue. And I feel like I'm not allowed to say how much it's hurt me. And one man just 2 days ago said, it was 30 years ago for him. His girlfriend was almost 6 months pregnant. It was a boy. And he said, Victoria, every day for 30 years, I thought about my son. Every day for 30 years. It pains me. He said, does it ever go away? And you know, the pain of abortion is always there. But God does heal and forgive, and God redeems. You live with it. You have tools when you go through therapy, when it's specific for after abortion recovery. And you can be okay. But just as if you lost a child that you did birth, you're going to grieve, as I said earlier, for the rest of your life. But you know that you have the promise of seeing that child again, and you know that you've been forgiven. So that's my mission, Lance, is to not allow my child to have died in vain. And I can sit here and say that after a 24-year career, and I pray to the day I die, that this is the career I'm involved in, that my child's death, many children are alive because of it. There are babies alive today. My child died.
Well, thanks for what you're doing, Victoria. I feel like this is such an important conversation, and yeah, my hope is that it happens in more settings, and I appreciate your word back to us as the church, to just being willing to turn the lights on here and to have the conversation that needs to happen so healing can happen and truth can come in. And so yeah, again, reminders, they lied to us. They lied to us too. TOO is coming out soon, and that, I guess, sounds like towards the end of summer 2021. Get that on Amazon. And you said you have a Facebook page, which is
just my name, Robinson. It's not because I'm some big deal. There's a blue check by my name. I didn't do that. They did. So you can find me there, and you'll know it's me. Write me, get in touch with me. Let me help you in any way I can, whether it's getting involved, whether you're in a crisis right now. Just listen, I don't have all the answers, but I promise you I will help you find them.
Yeah. No, thank you for what you're doing, Victoria. And really appreciate you spending time with us. You're being really generous with your story, and we'll stay in touch. So I'm going to officially say goodbye, but we'll stay on this for just a few more moments. And let's see. I'm going to figure out how to say goodbye to you, though. See, we're learning this. I don't know.
Well, thanks again for having me. Anytime you want to have more of this conversation, I'm your girl. Call me. I'm in.
That sounds good. Normally there's like an X I can touch, and I don't see it. Maybe you can.
Up at the top right.
Can you touch an X on your?
I'm going to do You. Bye.
Okay,
We're just a couple of old guys trying to figure this out.
dinosaur. Well, usually I can just, there we go. Okay, it happened. Sorry about that. Well, really good to have those moments with Victoria. She's a passionate lady, as she should be. She's carrying something that's really important and valuable. And again, just as we wrap up today's moment together, yeah, I just encourage you guys to take action with the things that Victoria was talking about. I think for me, my motivation for having this interview was I feel so much of that polarization and division in our culture with respect to this issue. And we're talking about abortion or keeping your baby. And I oftentimes, as a leader, as a man, as somebody who's a father to two daughters, I just I hate the polarization in culture. I hate the division. I hate all the hatred. I hate the hatred. It's probably not good to hate the hatred, but I hate the hatred. And my hope was talking to somebody with authority and wisdom and has been on that road for a long time to hear their perspective. Hopefully that would increase empathy and compassion and connection. And I think, I mean, there's a lot I'm taking away from the conversation, but probably one of the bigger points is that we're talking about somebody, an individual who's probably in a very vulnerable circumstance when they're newly pregnant and their pregnancy doesn't feel like a blessing or a gift or an opportunity. There's not hope attached to that pregnancy. There's more foreboding and fear and a sense of like, oh my life might be over now. My future is over. What am I going to do with my career path or my dreams? And so yeah, that was my hope, like approaching the conversation from like, how do people actually see this from both sides of the equation? And I loved what she was sharing there, that like there actually is a dynamic in culture that is exploitive, that actually preys on people's vulnerability and leads them towards something that isn't life-giving, and there's scars and there's all manner of trauma on the back end of having abortions. And so man, I hope that was helpful. Hope there was something there that was valuable for you in your journey. And I think the other big thing I'm taking away is the idea of vulnerability and honesty, and that, man, 1 out of 4 people have been involved in that process of the choice of having an abortion, and that people would have to sit in that pain and the shame. And yeah, that would be a bummer to me. Hopefully people are finding healing. And so connect with Victoria if that is, if you're so inclined. Thanks for joining us again here at Justice Collective. Again, the real thing we're going after in these IG lives is just talking to leaders, having dialogue with leaders who are active in some space of social change. And the hope is that it leads towards strength for you in your journey, and that it also is inspiration for you to engage in ways that you're feeling called to engage. We finish with that all the time. Get involved. The world is run by those who show up. Hope you're well. God bless you guys, and we'll see you soon. Peace.